Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to another session of our CBT food blog. I'm your host, Larry Hecker, and with me today from Allen Bradley is Joe Geigel. Joe, welcome to our show today.
Well, thanks very much. I appreciate it.
Great. Hey, before we get started, can you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I'm a longtime Rockwell person. I was actually here in the 1980s when state-of-the-art operator interface was an 800T push button.
Mm,
So I go back a long way. And as a matter of fact, today, we're going to talk a little bit about panel view. And I was actually on the original team that created the very first generation of that product in the late 80s and early 90s.
Gee, it's the technology is probably unfathomable to you from when it was when you started on this, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, very different, very different.
Yeah, I can't imagine. I was never in the technology side of things, heavily involved, but just from the outside, seeing some of the stuff we offered 25 years ago when I started with CBT to what we're offering today, and it literally is night and day.
Yeah.
Like you mentioned, we're going to start discuss a little bit about your stainless steel terminals. An easy question to start is why did Allen Bradley introduce this new line of products?
Well, that's kind of an interesting story. So it was about 3 years ago. We saw a need for it in the industry. A lot of people were concerned with all sorts of different things. And you might recall about 3 years ago, there was a lot of buzz going around in the industry about food safety recalls,
Yeah,
things of that nature. And those are pretty substantial recalls, and it happened in all different types of food. So, we have one customer in particular that spent a lot of time talking to us about it. We decided to work together to develop a product that would be superior from a washdown perspective for that industry. And that's how we got started with our original stainless steel terminal.
okay, good. What kind of issues out on the plant floor do these solve?
Well, first off, the big one is just simply washdown criteria. And it is interesting because we started developing this product well before the COVID era. But with the advent of COVID, what's come about now is people not only wash down their terminals with high pressure, high temperature, but they also use all sorts of caustic chemicals to try to, provide an additional degree of sterilization. So you have to think about this now. You're using pressures that are higher than ever, and temperatures that are higher than ever. So, for instance, they're blasting it all the way up to 1450 psi. Now, that's a lot of pressure when you think about it, and it's rated for temperatures all the way up to 176 degrees. Then on top of that, you start thinking about things like some of the washdown solvents include isopropyl alcohol. So those kinds of things can dry out the gasketing material and it cause problems. So those are just some of the things that you have to deal with.
Right. Now I've been in food plants where they're getting ready to wash down and they're putting bags over basically everything electronic. With your screen, do they still need to bag that?
No, absolutely not. And that's really kind of the whole point behind this. The stainless steel bezel itself prevents the bezel from degrading. The gasket is a blue food grade silicone gasket, and it's all made to keep that water out and to not get damaged from those types of situations.
Okay. What IP rating does this thing have?
So it's actually an IP69K rating, and that's what goes up to that 1450 psi and then 176 degrees Fahrenheit as far as the temperature.
Right. And I've seen videos of products being tested for this IP69K rating, and it's quite impressive the way they get the nozzle, within I think 6 inches of the screen and spray it from all the directions. And it's quite a demanding test. So in order to get that rating, it must have performed really, really well.
It certainly did, and it's not only that we're saying that it goes up to IP69K. This product actually has a National Sanitary Foundation certification, and to my knowledge, we're one of the only ones. We may actually be the only one that carries that NSF rating. So, and not only is the terminal itself does it have that certification, even the gasket, the separate gasket by itself has that certification. So, just a much higher level degree of protection and certified to that.
That talking about the gasket, what other design features are there that increase the protection over standard products?
Well, when you take a look at this, again, we talk about the stainless steel part of it. So you're looking for something that's not going to corrode or fall apart. So let's get back to what we were talking about earlier with some of the caustic materials that they're
Hmm.
washing down with. If you look at a standard terminal, you typically have a plastic bezel, and that will dry out in time from things like isopropyl alcohol or some of the other caustic chemicals. So when you put that stainless steel on it, that's sort of that assurance that the product's going to be around a long period of time and not have problems.
So you've got a blue gasket on that. That I assume that gasket's like a silicone material.
That's exactly correct. And when you start looking at OEM manufacturers of equipment in the food processing industry, you'll see that they use silicone types of gaskets on a variety of different things. But once again, we brought it into this product. Normally, you would have more of a soft foam cushion type of gasket.
Hmm.
This is a higher level, lasts longer, and it's easily replaceable in the field.
So I know you can replace those seals. Are those available to be purchased through Allen Bradley separately?
That's correct. So, you go to of course, all of the Rockwell automation distributors, Allen Bradley distributors, if you will, to purchase those gaskets.
Okay. Is there a recommended interval to replace those seals?
We don't give a hard replacement time on it, and it really depends on how often it gets washed down, the temperature they're washing down with. Some people might find that gasket will last them many years, while others may decide, once a year is probably a better plan for them. So it's just
Right.
one of those things
So,
that you got to kind of go through and inspect.
okay. Yeah, I'm sure some people, even though it's IP69 rated, will probably still bag it just because that's what they've always done. And my guess is in that case is that silicone seal will last a long time. But if they do, they treat it the way it's intended to be treated, probably more often. And I noticed, and I in a earlier blog, I was talking to someone else, and they used the blue gasket also. Just want to mention or remind our listeners today, reason it's blue is because that's a food grade color, and there's very few uh, natural foods that are that color, and that's why everyone uses blue as a food grade gasket material in the silicones and rubbers and plastics and all. So, again, for you guys, replacing those seals probably every year, so it'd probably be a pretty good PM project for our heavy washdown guys. So, again, and how long have these been out on the market, Joe?
So they've been out of the market now for just about 2 years.
Okay.
And so again, it's kind of coincidental with the COVID era, but it came out before COVID. And I can tell you that as soon as we started seeing COVID come into play and people were aware of this product, our demand went through the roof for it.
So
So
what kind of feedback have you gotten through the customers so far on it?
they absolutely love it. They absolutely love it because again, that first of all, in this COVID era, I think we're kind of in this mode where COVID and dealing with it is the new normal. There's no such thing as just saying, well, we're just going to bag it. That's just not enough right now. You have to have something that's going to survive. You have to be able to give it that intense washdown kind of thing. And so, what people love about it is they can put it in the plant. They can give it their most severe washdown up to IP69K, and they just don't worry about it. And maintenance people just love that because it's easy to clean. And if you do have to service it, it's easy to replace that gasket. There are some products out there that it's not easy to replace the gasket on. Well, this one is. So for a lot of different reasons, it just fills the bill nicely. And then, of course, you have to also remember that it is a PanaView Plus 7 product, which means it runs all the rest of the applications that the rest of the PanaView Plus 7 line runs.
Joe, the material that the touch screen is made out of, will that break down over time due to heavy washdown?
Well, it's actually a plastic film, and it is designed for these types of heavy washdown environments. So like all outer film materials, it can wear out. However, again, remember now it's meant for this environment. It's been chemically tested for it. It's been tested underneath all of those pressures and temperatures. So it's going to survive as well as anything out on the marketplace and far superior to most of them.
Okay, great, great. Again, you see real touch screens that you can barely see anymore, and you worry about it spraying it with chemicals for 5 years in a row, what that would do to it. So it's good to see that that will hold up too, so that those stay usable for the future. Okay, so what industries have you seen this really take off in, or you think are really good for this technology?
Well, there's no question that food processing is a really big industry for it, and that's one of the industries that we originally created it for, and that's for everything from meat packing to just packaged foods, processed foods, all sorts of different kinds of foods. Pharmaceutical is also another one where they want to be sure things are washed down very intensely, so that's important as well. But then we have a whole different class of industries that are interested in it. So I think everybody would recognize that stainless steel is typically a superior product when it comes to avoiding corrosion. Well, that is very important, but also remember that these terminals have conformal coated PC boards inside. So that means that the electronics have an additional degree of protection. And I think what often gets missed is that enclosures breathe. They absolutely breathe and they condense on the inside, right? And
Hmm.
so if you're in a gaseous environment, when it breathes, it's going to breathe in that gas. Now, if you have a corrosive gas, it's going to damage the electronics. It just will. It'll age over time. Now, there's not 100% protection saying it's never going to damage it, but it will last much, much longer than one that typically is not conformal coated. So now let's think about it. You've got all these industries out there where during the normal manufacturing process, the enclosures breathe, the gas goes in and out. So anytime you have that conformal coating on it, that's an additional degree of protection. So maybe you're in a tire and rubber type manufacturing
Hmm.
facility, some of those facilities where, they aren't the most pleasant places to be in, and your equipment has to survive. So it's another good area for a product like this.
Yeah, I never really thought about that. So probably our chemical producers and plastics and industries like that. Certainly, this is something we ought to present to them to let them at least know about it, because yeah, anything that gets in there can affect it. So um, even though it's not washed down or food, like you said, there are gases involved that could damage the electronics inside. So what different products are in this family of HMIs that you have products for? What are the different nomenclatures, I guess?
Sure. Well, first of all, the product that we've had out in the market now for this period of time has been the PanelView Plus 7 family. And most of our customers are familiar with PanelView Plus 7 and the prior
Mhm.
generations of PanelView Plus. And of course, it runs the factory TalkView software. Now, we just brought out a new Versaview 6300 industrial PC, which also has a stainless steel bezel on it. And the Versaview 6300 family, in totality, comes to us from a company that Rockwell purchased about 18 months ago, a company called Awesome, which is based in Italy. So as we brought their products into the portfolio, we renamed them Versaview 6300. And in this particular case, this product is actually new to Awesome as well as Rockwell Automation. This is a co-developed product. So again, it's only been on the market now for a couple of months, and we're very proud to bring it in. Has a lot of the same design qualities that we talked about with PanelView Plus 7. It's available right now in a 9-inch and a 12-inch, and eventually it will be available in some other sizes as well.
Interesting.
Then up next on the
Yep.
platform is the PanelView 5000. And I think you're familiar with the 5000 family.
Hmm.
As
Yep.
you know, it's our latest line of industrial graphic terminals. And it actually shares very, very similar outer hardware to the PanelView Plus 7. So when you look at the PanelView Plus 7, you look at the bezel size, the bezel shape, all those sorts of things, those will be held in common with PanelView 5000, along with the blue food grade gasket, et cetera, et cetera. But PanelView 5000, as you know, has a whole lot of unique things that it does compared to other products on the market.
So let's talk a little bit about the software. So far, we've talked all hardware, but on the software side of things, that's really the nuts and bolts of this, and really what separates it and gives it some features that's very unique in the marketplace. What are some of those features?
Yeah, so when you're in developing your application for a PanelView 5000 product, you have to remember that it utilizes scalable vector graphics. And basically what that means is if you create an application for one size terminal and you like to use it on a different size terminal within the line, you don't have to recreate the application. Just go ahead and create it for whatever size you'd like to, and then just have it automatically rescale for the other size terminals. And you think about that for a minute. If you're a developer and you've got an application, even a very basic application, you're probably going to put a couple of hours into it. And if it's a real complex application, you might have a week into developing it, maybe more. So anything you can do to reuse that application without having to recreate it is a really big deal. There are other things, of course, that you get out of this. You start looking at it and you think about the fact that you don't have to recreate your tag database. You can utilize all the same tags that you have for your controller. That makes it really efficient. And some people may or may not be familiar with the fact that you also have the ability to create high-speed on-screen buttons. So in other words, let's say in the past, you had an application where you were using a graphic terminal. However, the graphic terminal simply wasn't fast enough to do something like jog a conveyor.
Mm-hmm.
So in that case, you had to install separate hardware push buttons. Not necessary with PanelView 5000. It actually has a fast enough speed to be able to do jogging of conveyors and other typical things that you would do. So think about how much time that saves, how much cost it saves. It's just really a beautiful thing.
Right.
So
go ahead.
There are just so many things. I get really excited about this product because once people get their hands on it, they say, why in the world wasn't looking at this sooner? You start thinking about things like the alarming. There's nothing additional that needs to be done from the alarming. You set it up, you power up the terminal, all the alarms automatically appear on it. And then there's some real magic. Now, when you look at a typical graphic terminal that's on the market today, when it comes to alarming, if you were to lose communications with the controller and you're out on the plant floor, well, what happens if alarms start coming in from the controller? Well, the communication isn't there. So when your terminal gets reconnected, the alarms are really, it's an unknown. You don't know what's going on. You don't know what came in when, you don't know what order they came in. It's just kind of a mystery. With PanelView 5000, what happens is that the alarming is actually done in the controller. If you lose communication and it reattaches, well, guess what? It automatically pulls the controller and reports all of those alarms in the correct time-stamped order. Now stop and think about that if you're a maintenance person. What does that mean to you? It means if you're troubleshooting and you had a problem, you get to utilize those alarms to figure out what's going on. You simply can't do that with other products on the market. So this is a first for Rockwell Automation, and it's a huge advancement forward.
Wow, that sounds great. I know in looking at your product to prepare myself for this, I know you're offering remote access is part of this program. Can we talk about that for a sec?
Yeah, I'd love to talk about it. And as a matter of fact, Rockwell has basically 3 different variations of remote access. And before we start talking about the 3 different variations, let's just talk for a minute about why remote access has become so important. Now, at the start of this conversation, remember that we were talking about COVID. And with COVID, we want to keep our workers safe. So one of the things we want to do is keep them far apart whenever possible. Yeah. Sometimes that means separating things by 6 feet, but very often you may have people working in separate areas of the plant. You may have them working from home and you want them to be able to connect. So now, what are the 3 options that you have? Well, the first option that you have is VNC. With the VNC connection, virtual network computing, basically what happens is that you can tie in remotely via a tablet, cell phone, laptop, what have you, and connect to the operator terminal. Now, what the person sees remotely is what the operator sees locally. And the operator can take control and a person remotely can see it, or the person remotely can take control and then the operator can see what's going on. And you can set it up for read write access or read only. It's pretty much your choice. So that's available on PanaView Plus 7. It's available on the PanaView 5000 that we just talked about. And of course, you can also utilize it on our industrial PCs with Factory Talk, software. So you have a wide range of things you can do. Then we have the second level of product, and that is Viewpoint. And Viewpoint works with Factory Talk software, and that can be utilized either on a PanaView Plus 7, just like the one we talked about at the beginning, or it could work with one of our industrial PCs like Versaview. And in that particular case, what would happen is when the person develops the application, they can publish separate screens for that remote operator to see. They can be entirely different than what the operator sees. They can be read-only, they can be read-write, but again, they can be different than what the operator is seeing. Or if you want to, you could actually create the application and let the remote person see the same exact screen or screens, up to you. And then finally, the third level that we have includes Thin Manager software. And Thin Manager software is meant to work with thin clients. Now, our Versaview 6300 platform of industrial PCs that we already talked about also features dual boot technology. What that means is it can be utilized as a PC and also be booted up to work as a thin client. So with a thin client, what you would do is you would have a server and serve up to content to either a thin client or a dual boot PC. But all of the applications would be stored on that central server, making it fast and efficient. So Thin Manager software can be set up to work remotely as well. And there's just so many options, it's incredible. So for instance, with Thin Manager software, you can utilize relevance. Now, what relevance is about is it means that let's say you have a person in your plant, and maybe they're a maintenance person, and they're in a certain part of the plant, and they're standing next to a given piece of equipment. Well, what you could have done is in advance, you could have affixed a QR code or some other means to identify where that person is in the plant. Then you could have pre-assigned which applications and which content you want that person to see. So they could now walk up with their tablet, they could walk up with their cell phone, they could scan in that QR code, and now keep in mind they're remote from other things in the plant, but they're going to get served just the content that you want them to have at that location. That is tremendously powerful. And there's a whole lot of other things that Thin Manager software can do. But as I talked about, we have 3 different levels of connecting remotely. And the important thing is, whether you want just something very basic, you just want VNC, or you want something that has a lot more features to it, we've got you covered.
Great, great. Well, Joe, I think I've taken up enough of your time today. It's been very informative to me, and I'm sure our listeners. And again, we appreciate your time, and we look forward to working with you in the future.
Yeah, same here. Thanks for having me.
Great, thanks.